Hello, everyone. My name is Arion Harley Emerson, and I'm the Director of Music and Operations here at the Choir School of Delaware. We are so excited. This is our very first episode of And the Beat Goes On. Super excited to be here today. And we have a wonderful cast of characters to join us for our conversation. So I'm going to have folks introduce themselves. We're going to start with our guest on today's show, Dr. Rollo Dilworth.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rollo Dilworth. I'm really excited to be here today. I serve as Professor of Music Education and Vice Dean for the Center for the Performing and Cinematic Arts at Temple University.
Awesome. And then we'll start with Ms. Pasco and then go through all of our choristers here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Pasco. I am the Director of Education and Assistant Conductor at the Choir School of Delaware. Happy to have you here with us today, Dr. Dilworth.
Thank you.
And Mr. Nashan, why don't you lead us off?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Nashan. I've been going to the choir school for about 10 years. And my favorite thing about the choir school is that it introduces you to different things.
Awesome. Thanks, Nashan. And we also have Lex. All right, Lex, we can't hear you at the current moment.
Am I good now?
There you go.
Yay. My name is Lex. I've been with the choir school for about 4 years now, and I'd have to say my favorite thing about the choir school is the sense of community we've built up between all the members.
Awesome. And last but not least, Bree.
Hi, my name is Briera, and I've been with the choir school for 3.5 years. And I'd have to say my favorite thing about the choir school is definitely the preparation I'm getting for my future.
Awesome. So I'm so glad that we're all able to be here today. We've been really anticipating this for quite some time. So it's finally here. So first, Dr. Dilworth, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life right now with the pandemic? How is it impacting you and your work and everything that you're up to?
Sure. So, like many teachers, I am working online with my students in order to try to continue their educational experience. As you can imagine, having to make the shift from face-to-face teaching to online teaching in a very short period of time was something that I think challenged all of us, but we are moving ahead. Yesterday was actually our last official day of classes at Temple University. So we're moving into exams and then on into the summer. It's been quite an interesting experience because being a person who is very communal and used to making music with a lot of people in the same room, having to make a shift in which we're all apart and try to continue to work on musicianship and build community is a little more challenging, but it certainly has been fun and successful for me, and I hope it has been for the students.
Awesome. So just quickly, like what sorts of things did you pivot to doing? Like how did you handle ensembles? How did you, deal with theory and all those other sort of courses?
Yes, so our ensembles was probably the most challenging classroom activity to replicate. So a lot of the work had to be centered around analysis, around individual performances and assessments. And there were certainly opportunities for the group to get together, but to make music live in real time was quite a challenge.
Yeah, we know how challenging that can be. So these guys have been doing Zoom rehearsals, and it's very awkward when you are, singing on mute, on Zoom and, doing that sort of thing. So it's a kind of bizarre experience. So Bree and Lex and Ishan, can you guys talk a little bit about what we've been up to at the choir school and what is it like to kind of distance learn at the choir school during such a strange time?
I think
Mhm.
I think
Go ahead, Bree.
it's not really much different from what we usually do. We're still going over sight reading and rhythm practices, and we're still together, and we still do Wednesday rehearsals with the entire choir. So the only difference that I'm seeing is that we're unfortunately not all together, but I still get the same sense of community, and I feel like I'm still learning the same. So as far as I know, I'm doing good with distance learning, and I feel like I'm still progressing with the choir school.
Awesome. And Lex?
Um, I think as someone who sort of struggles learning outside of the classroom and not being engaged physically, it's been a challenge academically, but having the choir school as not only a structure but also a support system for the difficulties that come with being isolated from the rest of the classroom makes it a lot easier. And while while rehearsal may be a little strange with the whole muted mic thing and seeing people sing without any sound to it, it's still nice to get together with everyone. And we always do really sweet check-ins where Mr. Harley tries to make sure everyone's doing well, and it's good. We're doing good.
Awesome, thanks. So Dr. Dilworth, tell us, so are you doing any music making like outside of Temple? Like normally you do lots of all states. I'm guessing all of those have been canceled. So how are you making music these days?
Oh, well, thank you for that question. Yes, as you can imagine, I've had all-state choir events canceled, festivals canceled, and really all the way up through October, I have cancellations. And so what I've been doing at home is practicing more piano, practicing more organ, also composing. I think that has allowed me the opportunity to continue to expand my horizons and to continue to make music.
So what are you like? So tell us, what are you playing? Like what composers, which pieces? So what's on the music stand for Dr. Dilworth?
Oh, well, it's a variety of things, but to be honest with you, I'm doing a lot of rudimentary practicing. So I'm practicing scales, I'm practicing chord progressions, just getting my fingers back in shape. And I have some former students out there who are playing Mozart sonatas and Haydn sonatas, and I'm going to pull those books down in the next week or two and my Beethoven sonatas and start working on them again.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfect time to do something like that. It really is. And any composition during this period?
I'm trying very hard to do some writing. I'm looking at poetry right now and trying to make some decisions about whose poems are resonating with me, especially in this challenging time. I'd like to focus on writing some music that are in direct and maybe in some cases indirect response to the COVID-19 pandemic situation.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And how do you even approach like looking for a good text? Like, so of course it resonates with you, but how do you know it's the right one?
Oh, that's a very good question. You know, I think sometimes a sixth sense has to take over. Certainly, I have to find some sort of personal resonance with the text, and it has to not just speak to me, but I have to think in my mind, is this text going to speak to others? And if so, what message would I hope would be gained through setting the text to music?
That makes a lot of sense. And I like, what's the process? Do you just go to Google and you say inspirational poetry? Like, what are you like going to find like all of this stuff? Like,
Oh,
how do you even start?
yes. So there are some wonderful sites where you can hunt down poetry if you had very specific themes that you wanted to look at, or even specific poets. I have lots of poetry books in my house, and particularly poets of African descent. And I sometimes spend hours just reading poems, and sometimes I read the same ones over and over again to figure out where there may be some point of connection and some possibility of setting that text to music.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So one of the I guess, pleasures that we had and great opportunities that we had at the choir school was to work on a project with you, working on a choral trilogy that the three pieces together were called When Dreams Take Flight. And I'm wondering if you don't mind telling us a little bit about that piece, and then I'm going to have the choristers jump in and talk about what that experience was like, learning the pieces, working with you, and ultimately performing them at Pittsburgh for the Eastern Division Conference, and then the Kansas City National Conference.
Mm-hmm. So thanks for allowing me to speak a little bit about this piece. I want to give a shout out to the late David Lockhart, who was president at one time of Delaware ACDA, who really sort of brought us together for this project and reached out to National ACDA with their Fund for Tomorrow project and saw that this might be a great opportunity for us all to collaborate. This project has been absolutely wonderful because I am very passionate about writing music that speaks to young people, especially with texts that are aspirational, and inspirational. So it was a great opportunity to visit the school and to talk to the students, the singers, about their hopes and their dreams and their desires, and then incorporate those ideas into this set of pieces by specifically targeting texts that we hope would amplify their own aspirations.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about those, I guess, three texts that were ultimately set.
Okay, yes. So one is called When Dreams Take Flight. In fact, I think the poem is actually called Dreams. I can't remember, but it's by Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was an African-American poet born in 1872, died in 1906. And he's written a lot of poems that, although they are poems from his era about justice and equality and access and equity, these themes still resonate with a lot of us today. So I found that particular poem to be very relevant to our project. There's also a piece called The Soul of a Butterfly, which is a text by Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who was also a mid-19th century poet, but he was also an abolitionist. And he believed very much in women's rights. And I thought that what he stood for at that particular point in time would allow the students to know that there've always been people out there who have been champions for equality and for social justice. And so we took his words and set them to music. And then we took an African-American spiritual entitled Let Me Fly, which in itself is a social justice spiritual because it talks about, it's a response to nonviolence, in that the second verse says, meet that hypocrite on the street. The first thing he'll do is show his teeth. The next thing he'll do is tell a lie, but the best thing to do is pass them by.
Pass them by.
So there's some wonderful social justice themes in all three of these pieces that I hope resonated well with the singers. And I was really excited to hear them sing, and thank you for leading them and guiding them through this process.
Pleasure. It was definitely our pleasure. We loved it. We've performed the piece a lot over the last couple of years. So I'm going to ask the choristers to jump in here. Tell us what it was like to work on this project. Tell us kind of what you remember from the beginning of it towards the end. Why don't we start with Bree?
All right. Working on this trilogy was really fun to me. I could tell that Mr. Harley really loved all three of the pieces because we really went through all of them with a fine-tooth comb, and we really worked on it so hard that we got it nailed down. And I remember the first time we performed it was probably at our gala 3 years ago, and that was my first gala. And I just remember going through the pieces and singing them. I didn't realize that the messages had such a such a big relevance within me and within people my age. And then to be able to really specifically have a reflection with When Dreams Take Flight, it was one really fun for me, especially because I love analyzing things. I love writing, and uh, I was just really happy to be able to give my point of view, because I could really tell that the messages within these pieces was something that people needed to hear, and getting my message across was a weight off my shoulders, because I want people to know that, yeah, these messages matter, and these pieces, they mean something to people, and I wanted to be able to really uh, give my insight. And I think it was a just really fun experience, and I was really thankful for it. So thank you for writing those pieces.
Awesome. And Nishan, tell us what did you feel about the piece and the kind of the whole process of, from commission to performance, and what are your recollections and memories, and what did you like most?
Wow. The first time I heard those three songs, when after they came in and you said we were going to do them, um I actually went on YouTube and listened to all three of them, and like um like Bree was saying, it's really, all of the songs portray a different point in the recollection of how you obtain your goal. And um it really, all of the songs really show which path and which step you have to walk on or climb to really get to your goal. And I think it honestly connects to everyone, for
Yeah,
real.
absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And Lex, what were your remembrances, of kind of putting this whole piece together and the project together?
I think, well, with music in general, my favorite thing about it is its ability to connect people in a similar idea, no matter where they are. And especially with stuff going on right now, as scary as things can be and such, um, I think it's it's really nice to be reminded of, especially with the segment in which we're all saying our dreams and such. It's nice to be reminded that there are a lot of people with a lot of big aspirations and goals who, in their own ways, will change the world for the better over the time.
Hmm.
And it just brings a lot of hope, just the way it is structured and um, the way we sing it and all that. And it's really fun. Outside of all the deep, meaningful stuff, it's just really fun to sing. Uh,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So thank you for
Definitely.
composing such a joyful set.
Now, one of the things that a lot of folks might not know, they're like, what piece is this? Where can I find this piece of music? It's published through Hal Leonard, and the pieces are broken up into 3 different octavos. So you can decide to just work on one piece at a time. You can do all 3 at a time. So the trilogy, when it's presented together, it starts with Let Me Fly, then goes to Soul of a Butterfly, and then closes with When Dreams Take Flight. I love all of these pieces. The middle movement was probably my favorite, and it's very different than, I would say, a lot of the pieces that people might think of when they think of Dr. Rollo Dilworth. Um, it's it's not in the same kind of gospel or spiritual style. It's more like a part song, madrigal kind of texture, very modal kind of feeling, totally different kind of harmonies. Can you talk to us about that middle section? Just very different.
Sure. And one of the goals of putting this trilogy together was to offer some contrasting musical ideas. and some contrasting moods and contrasting vocal colors so that every movement wouldn't have the same kind of feel or sound to it. So I really took a close look at the text and allowed the text to really guide my work. And as I was putting this particular text to music, as you mentioned, I really felt like it felt more of a madrigal type piece, and that I could use texture and tonal patterns that are not typical Rollo Dilworth in order to really amplify the words and bring them to life. And that was exciting for me. It was really exciting to think a little more sort of modally with this particular text.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And there's like this great cadence on "It is the soul of the butterfly," and it's like everything comes to this moment of like stasis, and it's just absolutely stunning and beautiful. And I was just saying before we hopped on, we need to record these pieces because I think more people need to know them. And that middle movement, I think, is just brilliant. It's just one of my absolute favorites, and is pretty difficult too, to be able to sing in tune. It's an a cappella movement, and particularly if you're working to do the piece attacca without break and all of that, being able to do that, we were able to, get all that nailed down. But like all those intervals, and it's just, and the modalities, it was just so much fun to work on that piece. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is how a work can kind of grow. When we were first, I don't know if you remember this, but when we were first kind of working this idea, we were calling the trilogy "Let Me Fly." Yep. And so what ended up happening was we were like, okay, great, it'll be called "Let Me Fly," blah, 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 blah. And then we recorded some recordings from rehearsal, and it just became apparent that it was "When Dreams Take Flight," and that "When Dreams Take Flight" would end. Originally, it was going to be "When Dreams Take Flight," and then "Soul of a Butterfly," and then "Let Me Fly." And then it was like, no, actually, let's switch that around so that "Let Me Fly" opens and "When Dreams Take Flight" kind of closes. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you know that's the ending? Like, how do you know?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And to be honest with you, I sort of went back and forth myself trying to figure out whether "Let Me Fly" would begin and "When Dreams Take Flight" would end, or vice versa. We knew that "The Soul of the Butterfly" was going to be in the middle for a number of reasons. One, it's a totally different mood. It's a cappella, unlike the two outer movements. And also, when we're talking about the soul or the essence or the core of any animal or human being, we think of something in the middle. So I just knew that was going to be in the middle. And it turns out that in terms of transitioning from one key to the next, it works better to have "Let Me Fly" at the beginning. Because it ends in A major, and then "Soul of a Butterfly" begins modally in what seems to be kind of an A minor, and then it ends with the butterfly spreading its wings on a C major chord, and "When Dreams Take Flight" begins in the key of C major. So it actually does work out better that way. And I think it also tells the story in a very different kind of way of this notion of taking flight. So I'm actually very pleased, and I'm very, very excited. Chronologically, also, the pieces work that way because "Let Me Fly," an African American spiritual, came first. The words of Higginson came second, and the words of Dunbar came
Look at
third.
that. I never thought about that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, so it actually does work out that way.
Look at that. That's amazing. Like, my mind is blown because I never really thought about it in the chronology kind of aspect, but it makes perfect sense. Well, what I'm going to do really quickly is, like I said, we never actually recorded the full piece at a concert. I don't know why, but I do want to play a rehearsal recording from when we were first starting to go through the pieces. And it was after hearing this, When Dreams Take Flight, that we ended up like switching the order of it. So I'm just going to play a little piece here of that, and we will take a listen. And so that's when dreams take flight. So if anyone out there is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy this piece, one thing I recommend, don't go at that tempo. That was our reading tempo. We ended up taking it, it's considerably faster than that when we ended up doing in performance. But we absolutely loved it. We loved that ending. The beginning of it, you might have heard some allusion to the choristers talking about their dreams. So in the beginning, there was a section that's repeated. So in performance, what we did is we had students come up, they came center stage, went up to the mic, wherever you want to have them, you can send them, and they just talk a little bit about what their dream is. So you know, you can say anything that is kind of on your heart and in your mind. And so we basically did an exercise of kind of thinking about what our dreams were when Dr. Dilworth came and worked with us. And then we actually had them write them down. And so they actually carried their dreams with them in folders, and that they were able to refer to their dreams whenever. And it was kind of growing and evolving of whoever would kind of do this. And one little funny story for you that you'll appreciate is we were doing this piece once in a performance, and it was Peace Week in Delaware, and we had just initiated some brand new choristers, some young itty bitties. And so we're doing this whole kind of dreams part, and folks are coming up and talking about what their dreams are. And this one chorister comes up to the mic, and he had the most beautiful dreams. Like, I hope that we can have a world of equality and blah, blah, blah. It was wonderful. And then he gets up in this huge, in this church, colonial church here in Delaware. And he goes, my dream is that every emoji will be the poop emoji. And it rang throughout the church. And we were streaming live on Facebook. And that was a day where I was grateful that the conductor's back is to the audience, because I was definitely like, oh my God. So one of those great live performance things that you can never prepare for. And you know, the audience loved it and thought it was brilliant and comical, and I was cringing on the inside, and I thought it was like a disaster, but it was totally fine in the end. So I'm going to open this up to choristers and Ms. Pasco. What questions do you have for Dr. Dilworth?
I have a question, Dr. Dilworth. So I am personally interested in like composing music and stuff, both chorally and singularly. What like programs, if any, do you use, or do you write it down on paper? Like what process do you have for composing stuff? Because I am struggling.
Okay. Thank you, Lex, for that question. And I think it will depend on your own personal taste. But for me, I like writing the music on manuscript paper. And I'm a person who's very kinesthetic, and I have to, you know, putting the pencil to the paper is very important for me. I do have former students and colleagues who write directly onto a computer software program, either Finale or Sibelius. But for me, I'm sort of old school, and I'm very much kinesthetic in that way, but I'm also very visually oriented in that way. I can look at a piece of paper and visualize the notes on the page more so than I can on the screen. So you may have to experiment a little bit to figure out what works best for you, but I prefer the old pencil and paper method.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Bree?
I'm also very interested in becoming a composer and also becoming a music teacher. So if you have any advice for myself on how do I begin my journey, like who can I get in contact with? Like, where did you find the most support in becoming a music teacher and a composer?
Oh, thank you for that question, Bree. It's a very good question. I think start where you are with your choral program, and work with your teachers there in order to continue to build your musicianship skills and your understanding of music theory. And that may be the start that will get you going in your work as a composer. That's how I got started. I was in my school, and I actually started out arranging before I started composing, and that may be a good way for you to start as well. I would take the existing music from my choir class, and I would go home and I would sit at the piano and I would experiment with changing some of the pitches and changing some of the rhythms and changing some of the harmonies, so that I would begin to understand how a piece of music, especially a piece of choral music, was put together. I would take it apart and put it back together. So that may be a way for you to get started. I would very much encourage you to take piano lessons. Piano lessons will give you the foundation for building harmony and writing accompaniments for your melodies and for your choral pieces. And from there, start looking at colleges and universities that have good programs in music education. Consider Temple University.
Whoa! Absolutely. Nishan, do you have a question?
Yeah. Where do you get the ideas for writing your pieces? Arranging.
Okay, thanks, Nishan, for that question. That's a good question, because I often sometimes wonder how things get started for me as a composer or an arranger. Oftentimes it's just an idea that just gets trapped in my brain. I start wondering, well, what would it be like if I put my own take on X piece, if I were to arrange it. But also good words, good poetry, good speeches will often spark something inside of me. And if I find that I'm really excited by the words, that I think to myself, I wonder if this could be a song. And if so,
I think we lost you for a second there, Dr. Dilworth. So we'll see if he gets back. But what I think where we were leaving off was Dr. Dilworth was saying that that an idea gets kind of stuck in his head, and then it's the going to write it and all of that. So I'm going to just you're back. You froze for a second, but you look to be back.
Yes,
so,
I just got a note saying my connection is unstable. Sorry.
Oh, yes. No worries. So where we left off was you were saying you get something stuck in your head and
I have to follow my curiosity with, what would a song be like if I set those words to music, or the idea of what would a song be like if I put my own spin on it, if I were to do an arrangement of it.
Awesome. And Ms. Pasco, do you have a question for Dr. Dilworth?
I do. I've worked with pieces that you've written for years as a student myself, whenever I was in high school and college, and as a teacher, and now at the choir school. And I'm wondering, out of your rather extensive library, do you have a favorite piece that you've ever composed?
Thank you, Ms. Pasco, for that question. I'm honored to know that my music has been a part of your musical life for quite some time. That reminds me of how old I must be. Which is funny. To be honest with you, I have a lot of favorite pieces. This set of pieces that was composed in collaboration with the Choir School of Delaware, all three of them are very special to me. I think that I have a lot of favorites, but these are definitely in the top. And I think it's not just because of the music itself, because I don't pat myself on the back in that way, but it's because of the experience I had with creating this music in collaboration that I think makes it most meaningful. So those are usually the pieces that stick out the most for me. Even if it's not the music itself, it's the meaning and the joy that I experience collaborating and creating something with others that I think I find to be the most meaningful pieces. So thank you for that question.
You know, I'm thinking about what my favorite pieces of yours are, and there are a lot that are just coming to mind. But I remember the first piece that I I think I can't remember. It was in the same period of time that I did these two pieces, but you know, I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, and with the Peabody's Children's Chorus, and Doreen Falvey is amazing, 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 and she was just great. And I remember we did, I believe it was "Shine on Me." I believe that was one of the ones we did. That was in the early days, and I think that might have been the first piece of yours that I had ever sung. And I think, I don't know, I loved it. And I loved being in that choir because we did such a diversity of repertoire. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, look, it's that melody fragment and it's just put on top of this other melody fragment and it's put on top of this other melody fragment. And I got such a kick out of that, you know, as a kid, and loved that. And then I think the other one that, I don't know if this is pretty early, but this is another one that's sticking out in my mind, is Everlasting Melody. That was one of the, I feel like perhaps is one of the earliest, maybe the second one that I think I ever did. And just absolutely loved that one too. So I don't know if you do Everlasting Melody a lot, but that's definitely one that sticks in my mind.
Well, interestingly enough, both of those pieces, Everlasting Melody was the first piece of mine that Howell Leonard published in. They published it in 1999. It was written in 1997, so it's one of the oldest pieces in my catalog. And what's interesting about it is that Everlasting Melody and Shine on Me are the two most popular pieces
Really?
in my catalog. And I can't say for sure that I set out to write, you know, pieces that would become popular. I wrote them, the Everlasting Melody was written as a gift to a husband and wife who had a children's choir program at the time in suburban Chicago. And so I just wrote that piece for them as a gift.
Mhm.
And then Shine on Me was written for my own children's choir that I was working with in Chicago at the time. And I was trying to get the singers to bridge from singing two-part music with confidence into singing three-part harmony with confidence. And so that piece was written as an exercise. And so you just never know what sort of impact a piece may have
That is so
on others.
That's so cool. I mean, I really, really loved that one. I just remember thinking, man, this is the most brilliant thing. And seeing all of this layering, I just loved it. And I have such clear memories of Miss Falvey, the director, teaching it to us and working through style and all. I mean, I just remember all of it. I remember feeling like the left-handed, like I can still feel the left hand of the piano, like, you know, of what that feels like, and Shine on Me, like a very kinesthetic feeling with that. So that was definitely a favorite. We're going to get ready. We're going to get ready to wrap up, and we have a quiz that we're going to ask you. But before we do that, one of the things that I'm going to ask all of the conductors on that are coming on is, can you show us how you do a two pattern? Everyone I have ever seen does a two pattern very, very, very differently. And so I am always very curious to watch people's two patterns. So whenever I go to the orchestra or whenever I see someone else's concert, what I'm always looking for is their two pattern, just to see what their two pattern looks like, because I think it's so interesting to see the variations in two patterns. So how do you do a two pattern, and why do you do it that way? And what do you think works for it?
Oh, okay. So that's a very good question. So I'll try to sit back just a little bit. I got my pencil, my pseudo baton here. And so for me, a two pattern always goes straight down, rebounds slightly upward and out, and then back in, and then back up. So it's almost like a backwards, I don't want to say J, but I tend to, so if this is the ictus, I do it this way. And the reason I do it this way is because I always want to make sure that I get back to this point here, so that I don't rush the beat. The tendency is if you go down and then come back up somewhere here in outer space, you're not giving that second beat the same length of space as you're giving the first beat, which means that inevitably it's probably going to rush, or you're going to have to rush in order to get there. So if you think of this, 1, 2, and then subdivide it, dot, 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 you're always going to get to 2 at the right time, and you're always going to have the space between 2 and 3 to get the same space to get back to, from 1 to 2 as you did going from, from 2 to 1 as you did from 1 to 2.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Can you show us that a little bit higher? Because the where the ictus was a little.
So here's 1, and then here's 2, and so 1 rebound 2. So you notice the space between from here, from getting to 1 is the same, and then the rebound, and then this is the same space going from 2 back up, right?
Yep.
Otherwise, if you use this space, if you go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, you're cheating yourself.
Yes.
You're cheating yourself in terms of the amount of space. It won't be the equal amount of space going from 2 back to 1 as you did going from 1 to 2.
And then the other interesting thing is I'm noticing, usually in the textbooks you see this U kind of shape for that, but I like, and then you, like you said, it becomes a J, it becomes a J.
Yes.
And I'm noticing yours is almost like a long V.
Yeah, my rebound just sort of goes out. Now I can vary that, of course, but in general, if I'm trying to keep a strict 2, it's da 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 bum 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 bum, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, can you show us the Susan Mark doing A with kind of the angle of the B, doing it with the J? So we can see the difference?
I'll try. Yes. Okay. Here we go. So here we go. Here is sort of with the curve, the J.
Mm-hmm.
Da 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 bum bum. So you're always sort of cheating that second beat a little bit, but because you're not giving it the same amount of space that you are giving the first beat. So here it is, back to the way I traditionally do it too. Ba bum ba dum bum 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 bum. Bum, bum, I'll switch them. So for me, it actually allows you to have a little bit more control. If you think of more of the V rebound, it's not to say that you couldn't do a more of a curved kind of feeling, but the more of the V will allow for the rebound and allow for much more stability in that beat pattern, and it gives you much more control because you know exactly what you're aiming for, which is this. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ga, 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 as opposed to 1, where's 2, somewhere out here, 1, 2. So I know I'm being a little bit dramatic, but that's what music is.
No, but right? That's why I asked, because I see so many people do it differently, and I kind of like take a snapshot of how people do too, and so it's like I think that is a great approach to be able to do it. And I see so many different ways that people kind of manage it to. And like, I feel like it's the most problematic, gesture there is, and beat pattern that is. And I think oftentimes the French 6 is a lot easier in many ways than just the 2 pattern. So I always like to ask that question because I'm super nerdy and I really watch for that. And so whenever I go to the Philadelphia Orchestra and I get to see Yannick do a 2 pattern, I'm thrilled. And I'm like, wait, where exactly, like what is the method here? And it feels very different again with baton than it does even with freehand. So we're gonna thank you for that. I love that. Very, very nerdy. Thank you for indulging me in that. And we're going to close out today with a little quiz for you, a little game that we're going to play. This game is essentially like nose goes. It's our little quarantine quiz. So what we're going to do is ask you about some of the things that you may or may not have been doing during this quarantine. It's just a fun, lighthearted way for us to end. So I've got a timer here and I'm going to put 90 seconds on the clock. And by the time we're done here, you'll see a big duck that will be shown on this screen. And so Miss Pasco is going to ask you all the questions and we'll get started. All right, you ready, guys? We can all play here.
Yes means your nose goes. And feel free to play at home. Ready?
All right. Let me just move this to the gallery view. And here we go.
Used Zoom. Did a puzzle. Dyed my hair. Baked bread. Made a TikTok. Taken a face mask selfie. Coughed and wondered. Skipped a shower. Gave into Tiger King. Purchased more than 10 rolls of toilet paper at a time. Became that person at Costco. Pretended to be frozen or muted on Zoom. Have to beg someone to stay home. Attempt a virtual choir video and fail. Worn pajamas for 24 hours or more. Joined a virtual party. Lost track of days of the week. Morphed into a nocturnal being. Logged onto Zoom with business attire on the top and pajamas on the bottom. Spoken to a friend you haven't caught up with in a while. Binge watched a show in 48 hours or less. Shopped online for something you didn't need. Buy snacks for a week and run out a day or two after going to the store. Made a TikTok video.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Dilworth. Thank you, Ms. Pasco. Thank you, Lex, Bree, and Nishan. This was so much fun for our very first episode of And the Beat Goes On. If you would like to, if you tuned in late and you want to see the full episode, this will be made available here on our Facebook or YouTube channel where you'll be able to see it at the beginning if you would like. Please share with your friends. On episode 2 of And the Beat Goes On, we'll be having Dr. Amanda Quist, who is the director of choral activities at the Frost School at the University of Miami. So we are very, 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 very excited about that. That is going to be on Thursday. So that's Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Please join us and Dr. Quist. Until then, take it easy. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.